Welcome everyone to another episode of Time for BL. And on this episode, it's going to be a special episode. I have two guests with me. Both of them are my BL friends that I met on TikTok. We have Ceci, or 25th and South. Say hello, Ceci.
Hello.
And we also have Bee. Is your everything just love Bee?
What? Everything? What? Well, you can call that. Like, I started my thing called Love Voice Info because it was about providing information, and then now it's just everyone just know me as B now, which is great.
Okay. So yes, our focus, like I said, is going to be on Heartstopper, and the reason why is not just because of season 2 coming out, but because of something that Alice Oseman said back in 2017. If you go to my blog post, I have everything there. But basically what they said was, when asked if Heartstopper is a BL, yep, no explicit sex in this comic. The characters are teenagers, so it's just not appropriate. And even if they weren't, I'd have no interest in drawing that. I wouldn't describe this comic as yaoi or even BL. They are genres of comic that tend to fetishize and eroticize queer men in a bad way. This comic is just a romance between two boys and a coming-of-age story. I took issue with that. B, did you take issue with that?
We took. I think a lot of us took issue with that. And if you actually been aware of what their fans been doing as well. I mean, they did a petition to Netflix and told them that we don't want this to be called a BL or yaoi, and they eventually won and have categorized it as LGBTQ. And of course, if you've seen other tweets, something similar happened. Someone questioned where are the other BL creators or, like directors, actors who actually attend, Pride events, because Alice did and they casted. Therefore, they are better than other BL directors and writers because they didn't show up and they didn't support LGBTQ as much as they did. Great conversation, I think. It's amazing. It's amazing the kind of conversation that I get from my TikTok comments as well. People still leave that, and I just had someone yesterday leaving exactly that. That yes, but the whole term yaoi and fujoshi, that's what it is about. Fantasizing sexual sexual interaction between the characters, and I still get this in 2023.
And I understand where that comes from, because when BL, yaoi, all that started out, it did start out as a fetishization, and it was made for women to be able to fantasize. But it's almost as if people just want to willfully ignore the fact that it has changed. The creators have changed. It used to be just women writing yaoi and BL for other women. Now we have more queer individuals stepping into the space and creating the stories they themselves wanted to see, the characters they wanted to be able to grow up with. And even when we look at GMM TV right now, Off is heading that whole division basically, and is making sure that we're getting more stories, like even taking stories that like Bad Buddy, which I believe we've all seen, and changing parts of that story to give better queer representation. Because when you look at Bad Buddy the TV show, Bad Buddy the book, those are two different stories, the same characters, but very different stories. And I really love the changes that were made, because I feel like the changes made for Bad Buddy makes me go, if I have a queer teen in my life and they want a story to, to help them learn about themselves, or just to be able to see themselves depicted, I'd be like, oh, watch the show. But I wouldn't give them the book, because the book is more fetishization and fantasy, in my opinion. So Ceci, for you, the comment that Alice Oseman made, how do you, as a newer BL fan and someone who did you start with you started with like a 1980s movie, correct? Or
started like
with queer media?
Well, yeah, no, I've been watching like LGBTQ stuff since I was in middle school. Starting with like a show on MTV called Undressed. There were tons of LGBTQ stories in that show.
Which, by the way, Undressed, one of the greatest MTV shows ever with the worst acting.
Yeah, but a lot of those actors have gone on to become very successful. Anyway, yeah, so I've been watching like just LGBTQ stuff for years, but yeah, within the last year and a half or so, I've started watching what would be categorized more as BL, and I feel like that is more of an international, in America, that's more of an international term. Starting with probably what you would not categorize in the strictest term of BL, kinporsh. I feel like that if we're going by like a definition of just the word itself, boys love, those were men. And but yeah, so just when I saw that, and I feel like it was a video that Bee made that clued me into what Alice had said, I was really confused because, you know, Heartstopper is just, it's obviously not the exact same story, but it's just like Bad Buddy, just like My School President, just like you know, the Korean BL's Cherry Blossom After Winter. Like it has the same feeling, it has the same flow, it does a lot of the same things. So it's weird for her to say, or them to say, that it shouldn't be in the same category, because with those shows alone, a lot of the Thai ones, especially a lot of the Korean ones, it fits perfectly in there. If you took Heartstopper, the whole story, and you put it in another language in a country where they have a thriving BL industry, it would work. It would work well. And to hear that comment came in 2017 when with SCOTUS or SOTUS came out in 2016, did they not see that? Like, I'm sure there were other BLs that have not been overtly sexualized. But that's like with any drama. Like, there are teen comedy movies that are just sweet and you know, kids running around trying to save the world, and then there are ones that are categorized as teen sex comedies that there's not an actual teenager in the cast, but they're having really sexualized themes and doing this with so-called teenagers. So there's always going to be this wide scope in any genre. So to say that, oh, this genre is just this, that's a weird statement to me. It's weird to say that when you don't know, but you think you know, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Because like, as you're saying that as well, I'm thinking about the OG teen show, Degrassi.
Yeah.
Degrassi tackled a lot of really serious themes that attracted a lot of teens to the show, because it was things that they were going through that you wouldn't see usually on your afternoon cartoon, you know, that wouldn't talk about. We had the teen pregnant, like in the OG Degrassi Junior High Degrassi show, we had the teen pregnancy storylines, they had drug storylines. There was the storyline where the girl wasn't sure if she was pregnant or not, and she had to go get a pregnancy test, and back then it was basically a science kit that she had to do on her own. And then in the newer version, the next generation, we had very similar storylines as well. And one of the things they added, which I don't know if they did in the OG one, they focused as well on teenagers in relationships with adults. So we had Mr. Oleander, I think was the one. And there was a whole thing about him dating the girl, getting outed at the school, and then he was still allowed to go to her prom as her date. And no one was looking at Degrassi then with these storylines and saying, oh, they're going too far, because kids were saying, oh yeah, this is stuff we see all the time, this is true to our life. My mom watched an episode with Degrassi with me, and she's like, why do you like this show so much? I'm like, because it doesn't talk to me like I'm stupid.
Yeah.
it gives, a realistic story. But then now when you compare Degrassi to a newer show like Euphoria,
Mm-hmm.
that is completely different. I don't even know if Euphoria is even for teens. Who watches Euphoria?
It's not for teenagers. But kind of in the same, like, think of the era of Degrassi, and then you would look at a show like in America, those Saturday morning teen shows, so like Saved by the Bell, California Dreams, all that stuff that were very cutesy and sweet, and they didn't talk about that type of stuff, and if they did, it was like a special episode and disclaimers all around, and after it was over, there's a phone number you can call, like if you need help and stuff. So there's always like a mix-up of what you can find in any genre.
Now, so when I look at Heartstopper, I feel like Heartstopper became popular because of BL. I just personally feel like if it wasn't for the BL fandom, Heartstopper the TV show, Heartstopper even the comic, wouldn't have as much readers and as much watchers as it does. So with Alice making this statement, and as BL fans, how do we have that conversation of BL fans enjoying Western work and how Western BLs, as I call them, judge Asian BLs and how they kind of degrade Asian BLs in a sense? Because even like using the term BL for them, LGBTQ plus for us, is degrading it. Because why does a show like Cherry Magic, which is about like two 30-something-year-old men, why is that considered a BL? Like, these are 30-year-old men. And it's not a yaoi even. If we're going to use yaoi as being the sexually explicit ones, it's not a yaoi either. It's about a guy who's a virgin and gets powers from that. So how do we then, as BL fans, address, as Western BL fans, for me and Ceci, I guess, and I guess you too, because you are in New Zealand, so how do we address like the Western view of BL as watchers of BL who are not living in Asia?
You go.
Like, the term BL, that's not what is used in any country there, is it? Because Thai doesn't use that word. They don't use that.
Thai use series Y. So
is that
Y
so
means yaoi?
Okay. So when they're using that term, are they thinking of it is the same as BL, or is it different?
So we are seeing a change in Thai drama where they are starting. You see some people start using the word BL instead of series Y, and it's particularly those who have a more international fan base.
Okay.
But a lot of everyday term, they still call them series Y, or and the girls who are, or in Japanese called fujoshi, in Thailand they call them sawai, so girl who are interested in yaoi, and so they're still using the word yaoi as their word term. In Japan, obviously they do use them interchangeably with yaoi or BL, but majority of them will be using BL or boys to love as the terminology. But I find it very interesting. So I was doing an interview with someone from Hong Kong about, we've had LGBTQ movies and dramas for years, and it's not recent. And same goes with Japan as well. And it's interesting how that when Alice think, because the Western term is, BL is this and that. Actually, it's funny how some Asian creators also see that there's a difference. And I think it's just like when I had my interview with Patrick, it's a very fine line as to what you consider as BL. And I think everyone's interpretation is different. So Patrick's interpretation is that if it's something sort of more fluffy, cute, lovey-dovey is more BL type. It's more rom-com, and then anything a bit more sort of real, that talks about the struggles and things of being LGBT, that's more an LGBTQ movie, which can be, and I guess if there is a story that isn't specifically about love but about the queer community, then you probably can't call it as a BL because there's no love as such in it. So I guess that's the kind of, and as I said, every person has slightly different interpretation, particularly Asian countries where they have been doing queer characters for a very long time, and I think the term BL seems to be and then now you've got GL, which is a little bit more, I guess, fluffy and easier to understand, because if you use the word yaoi or yuri for GL, not everyone understands what that actually means. But BL, GL seems to be quite straightforward, but not everyone knows what it is. Like they go, oh, you're watching like a queer movie, which is not quite queer, as in, I guess the difference is that they're not talking about how everyone is queer and straight. They're just falling in love, and it's just about two characters who fall in love who happen to be in the same sex or of different, sexual orientation.
Well, and I guess because I'm kind of coming in at a time where things are changing, so a lot of the shows that I'm watching that are newer, they deal a little bit, like the characters do kind of deal with that conflict a little bit of, oh, but it's a man, oh, it's okay. Like they do kind of have that, like, because like I said, Kim Porsche was my first one, and there was like a whole thing where even Porsche was like, I'm not sure about this, because Ken was obviously gay, but Porsche had never thought about it before, or at least it was never explained in the show that he'd ever thought about it, right? And so that's probably a change from how they did it before, to where it wasn't really a question. It was just like, oh, I like this person and I would be with this person. And kind of to go back to your question, JD, it's a hard thing to do if we're not addressing the bigger issue, and that is just prejudice and discrimination, and that's racism is really just what it is. To look at a Western view and say, oh, well, this is LGBTQ, and then anything Asian that's doing the same thing is BL or GL. That doesn't make any sense, because then you do have them trying to fit a show or a film that has very adult themes, adult conversations, and call it a BL, when, again, there are no boys in this show or movie. These are grown adults having, dealing with things. Like, it's, maybe we could work our way with that with a college or a university BL, but a lot of the ones that I watch, office settings or, just adult stuff. So and then we have a lot of them where the characters are openly queer, and they're not trying to figure themselves out. They've already done that. By the time we see these characters, in their story, they've already figured themselves out. Now they're just trying to find a decent relationship. So if the definition is coming of age, a lot of the shows that we'll categorize as BL don't fit. They're just LGBTQ, in my opinion. And there have been a lot of shows where I'm watching it, like Bed Friends, like, this isn't BL, that doesn't make any sense. like it should, and kind of how I looked at it was, this is just BL is just another category of the LGBTQ media experience, and what separates it is the idea of it's like a coming of age. These are people that are trying to figure themselves out, and they're doing it together and falling in love, and there might be a little angst to it, but that's what it is. But then, like, again, some of these shows don't even fit that, because they're too adult to if and while we can all grow and stuff throughout life, I feel like coming of age there's a very specific thought process with that, right? Like, it's usually children, it's teenager, it's a young adult coming of age, not what a lot of what we see. So I think we have to address, number one, like I said, the racism that is under the surface of trying to like put BL in a separate category from other LGBT things, and then recognizing that these stories that a lot of these international shows tell are universal stories, are adult stories. And we should recognize and appreciate that.
And I think this interesting conversation was, we knew that when Alice Oseman's books were published and then turned into a series, apparently there's another Korean webtoon or creator who did exactly the same thing, but they didn't get any notice by any publisher and or media. So they wrote something that was just as amazing at the same time that Alice did their book, but nothing happened. And you're right, there's a wide range of BL or yaoi in Asia, you know, from the coming of age, and you've got you know, the bad buddy or my love mix up, or even my favorite at the moment is My Beautiful Man, and even from Thailand, you know, I told Sunset About You, that was absolutely about coming of age and trying to find out who they are. And then, you know, to the ones that are about older, and I had this conversation, as I said, was there are also queer stories that talk about much older community, the 70s, the 60s, 70s, right? And you have one in the Western media, and everyone talked about it. But then there is actually one in Hong Kong called Sok Sok, or about two elderly men who found love at 60, 70, right? Do we call that boys' love as such? Because it is about romance. It is them falling in love. There's nothing sort of about, you know, fighting, or there's a little bit about fighting for rights and things, but mainly it's about them falling in love. Could that not be a BL you know, a genre as well? Could that not be being considered as a romantic story? And I think, yeah, like we said earlier, JD, that BL have changed, like everything else have changed. It has started off with a bit of, you know, fetishism, but it has changed. There are stories now that really explore things much more than just, you know, falling in love, and way more complex story. When I talked to Patrick, for example, he talked about his character in My Ride, and how they just go, oh, well, I don't really see gender as in, because everyone around me makes it so normal for us. And then you've got one who are like the Eclipse or the Miracle of Teddy Bear, who puts in politics in their story that we don't get to talk about actually sometimes in the Western media. So, you know, I do have a problem with them sort of categorizing it just based on a race. But if it's about, you know, stories that are about romance and rom-com, and you call them BL, that's fine. Anything that is maybe queer but nothing to do with rom-com, like this lovely Japanese one that I watched called Two People Who Can't Fall in Love, and it's about, you know, an asexual and a romantic couple. That could be called a queer media, because there's no romance in that story. So that I'm happy with. But, you know, like, so yeah, if it's about race only, that's obviously a problem. But if it's about the different genre and how that fine line is, that I can understand.
So let's think about now, like with Heartstopper, because I said Heartstopper, I know so many shows that are so similar to Heartstopper. We have My Love Mix-Up, we have Bad Buddy, we have My School President. Cherry Blossom was mentioned. I would also say Semantic Error. Like, these are all stories like that fit into everything that Alice said. It's romance, it's about them falling in love, it's not overly sexual. So why is it that they still get categorized in BL, but Heartstopper is too good for the categorization of BL? Because when I look at it, I'm like, no, Heartstopper to me is a BL. It fits into the BL genre in everything, in every way. And the only thing that makes it different or sets it apart is the fact that it's based in England and it's not about Asian characters.
Yeah, or all Asian characters.
Yeah,
I think it's just 100% Alice's ignorance on what BL is beyond what they might have known before. And I think that if they actually took the time to learn and maybe even communicate with other BL creators, like directors and screenwriters and stuff, they'd recognize that, oh, it does fit in the same category. I don't know why. That's my only guess, because I don't know why you wouldn't want to be in a category or want your medium to be in a category that is celebrated and is growing and are telling interesting and unique stories. And like I said before, it was completely different, because I feel like, gosh, before the 2000s, any LGBTQ show or movie that I watched, the queer person never survived to the end. They were gone, or one of them was dead, or both of them are dead, or they were left unhappy and miserable, or the character was just this one-dimensional that would come in with their little sassy quip and walk out of frame. So just the whole genre in itself has changed and morphed to where we're recognizing that these can be complex stories that don't just have to focus on romance or the difficulties of having a romance. As queer people, it can focus on tons of other things that relate to the difficulty. So I don't understand why, beyond that they just don't know and they're just ignorant to it, and they aren't allowing themselves to learn.
Yeah, and I think as you mentioned earlier, JD, that there is obviously a bit of racism there, because they do see themselves better as in, look, I've got all these characters that talk about the different issues with LGBTQ, and we've got a very diverse range of characters from both ethnicity to sexual orientation. But we know that these happened in other Asian program as well, and other than calling it being ignorant, there's no other ways. And you're right, and you pointed out something that was really great earlier, is that I feel like Heartstopper got to where it is because people are interested in BL. There are more people, as compared to when I first started watching them, more people know what BL is and are more interested in them. We know that a lot of Asian audience don't tend to watch Western queer media as much in the past, and with Heartstopper they talk a lot about it because it was like, oh, this is really cute, and I do watch BL, that makes sense that I'm watching that. Currently Red, White and Royal Blue, again, it's another one that people were like, oh, I'm really interested because this is a BL, and people watching it because of that. I don't know if you call it an LGBTQ movie that would work as such. As I said, it's not like there isn't. I mean, if you open up Gaga Ooh La La, there are hundreds and hundreds of really older, LGBTQ productions. So we know it's always been there, but I don't think they would have the same interest if they weren't labeled as BL. People watching BL because there is a certain thing with BL that makes you want to watch them, right? It's cute. You got good characters, you got good looking actors, and that's why they're watching it. And I agree, they should actually take advantage of that instead of trying to tell people, no, I don't want to be called BL because that's fetishism. They could have got so much more if they actually embraced the term that they are BL.
And it also, for me, it just feels like an insult as well, because you're insulting a whole entire audience of a genre right there. Especially people who, again, are not watching the crazy fetishization stuff. there's many people, if you talk to them, they'll tell you they didn't watch Kin Porsche because that was it was a little bit too graphic with the sexual stuff. They tried to watch the cut version and couldn't get through it. People who didn't watch Bed Friends because, again, too sexual. People who are not going to watch Only Friends because, again, too sexual. But you know what they watched? They watched the Bad Buddy. They watched My School President. I have a friend who I've had on the podcast before, and her daughter is a lesbian, and one of her daughter's favorite shows that she saw was Semantic Error, because for her, she doesn't like most of the queer media because of her age. She can't watch. She's too young for it still. Semantic Error was one of the first shows she could actually watch. And we're seeing that more and more with how many teens are getting into BL and people letting them know, please don't watch this stuff, but hey, here are the ones you can watch. And we have Heartstopper on that list as well because, of course, it's a teen show. It's a cute little teen show. So when Alice says that, it's insulting to the audience. It's insulting for when I'm introducing people who have watched Heartstopper. And I'm like, oh, you should watch Bad Buddy. If you loved Heartstopper, you're going to love Bad Buddy. And then they go, but that's a like an Asian BL. That's different, right? And especially if they already have this concept of what BL is, what Alice said feeds into that ignorance instead of helping people to get away from that ignorance and learn better. So, with that said, how do we educate people? Or is it a situation where Alice, especially with the status they have now as a writer and producing their show and all that, are they responsible for coming out and making another statement, basically clarifying and changing and learning for themselves what BL actually is?
I want to answer that, but I want to just throw something out there. Maybe you guys saw it and maybe not. I remember when My School President first came out, there were a lot of people hesitant to watch it because it was set in high school. And I found that interesting because I never heard anyone complain about Heartstopper being set in high school. So it's definitely, there is a mindset that definitely can be changed. As far as Allison goes, that's what they believe. Say it with your whole chest. I don't really care. We know what we're watching. And I don't really think it's up to them whether or not the show is categorized as BL. It's up to the viewer at this point. If you know, I find it really sad that people petitioned Netflix to change the category. Because again, if we're going by the definition of coming of age stories of two people falling in love who just happen to be boys, it fits 100%. And then, you know, with the other characters in there still fits because BL is also exploring, like with Bad Buddy, there was a whole GL storyline in there. And there have been transgender characters in BL that the first one I can think of is End of the World with You. There's a trans character and a trans actor in it. I think in personal life they still go by he pronouns, but very much represents themselves very feminine. So it could still fit in the category. I just think it's just going to be a lot of us Westerners and people who haven't been in the space to, you know, and people who have been in the space for a long time to say, hey, these stories are the same, just educating everybody else, really. And I appreciate you know, the community that's been built on TikTok, because that's kind of how I've learned so much. Like, main reason I started following Bee is like, you're teaching me so many things. I was like, let me go to the source. So just more education and promoting voices like yours, and then there are a couple of other creators to promote their voices who aren't just, because like you come from an Asian country, so you've been seeing BL emerge and then become international, and so you have more of the history and the knowledge that I don't have, that even some of the bigger BL content creators don't have, because they're Westerners and they didn't get that. So I think just pushing more viewer voices, and then us giving you that space to do that, so it can be heard.
And I think people don't understand how BL is super it's very different in Asia, like you were saying, because we are talking about countries that are a lot more conservative, that we might have LGBTQ content for a long time, but they are still being seen as this mystical, fictional characters, because the society generally do not accept them, and people don't understand that why when you say, oh, you know, Heartstopper is that, well, for probably for the American or the European community, well, you have a lot of queer stories, it's fine, you accept them, it's fine to see that. But in Asia, it's not, it's very unique, and we still call them sort of, you know, fictional, and the fact that a lot of the BL stories have changed the conversation in Asian countries. You know, we're having that open discussion in Thailand, for example, about how the Thai government, you know, is selling BL, but they don't support it, and people are actively, you know, trying to push that. We have more people that are not from the community who are now supporting the community because they've been watching a lot of BLs and they want to learn more about what the rainbow community is about. So there is a positive drive to that. But we know that some of these actors, right, they get bashed, like Holland, the Korean artist and model, he got bashed because he is queer, and some characters or some people who've acted in a BL has to remove all that content from their social media. I had a conversation with someone else the other day about, you know, why some of the Korean idols have removed BL that they've been part of from their Instagram, because some of these countries are still extremely conservative. They cannot come out. And so, yeah, when you go, this is all fictional and they're just making it all very pretty. Well, actually, for all of the queer community, they actually need that fantasy as well, where in this world, everyone's happy that everyone is queer and no one cares about you that you're queer. And they need that escape, and media might be the only way they can escape to. Whereas, yeah, in the Western world, it's probably fine, you know. They don't, no, we don't have that thing in the Western world where we go, oh, we can only live in a fantasy. So I think, yeah, people need to, I guess a lot of this discussion is because people might not have that understanding of how it works in Asia and the culture behind it, and so they're making all the statement as, and I'm often happy to have a conversation if people genuinely don't understand, but they just need to be open to the fact that, hey, there's different culture we're talking about here. It's not just the media we're watching. They're a very different culture, and to watch, yeah, I mean, for me, watching it grow and that there are more people wanting to learn more about it, it's been great for Asian and Western community that I've been working with. So yeah.
And I'll say, I was one of those people that didn't realize how conservative, you know, Thailand was. Kind of got the idea of Korea, but not Thailand, because even before I started getting into BL, I had known that country as being very LGBTQ friendly as far as what media we see, or I've seen in America, you know, from like the sex work and all this stuff, and people just, it seemed to be like a very welcoming place. So to find out that, oh no, it's not, that it can be just as dangerous to be a queer in Thailand as you know, in America can be. I mean, I think Americans too, there's this false sense that it's safe for everyone here. It's not safe everywhere. It's not even all that safe in places where it's deemed to be safe. But yeah, just continuing to push that education of why it is also so important, not to diminish what various Asian countries LGBTQ content is, because that is how change will be pushed. I think in America, that is why there has been so much change over these last 20-30 years, is because now people that don't normally interact with queer people on a regular basis are seeing it on their television screens. They're seeing seeing that character and watching that character, even reluctantly, and then at some point they're like, oh, I actually love this character, right? Like, and so that's what's happening in places like Thailand and Korea. People are sitting down and watching it, and yeah, at first it might be fantasy, but eventually and hopefully they're watching these stories and thinking to themselves, oh, well, you know, I have crushes on people and I'm nervous about telling someone I like them, and I have those conversations with my partners and stuff. And I love how they've been, in a lot of these shows, have been using parents or grandparents and showing them as being, you know, more conservative, and then in the show showing them change, or they're not as you know, conservative as maybe the teenagers thought, right? Like, for instance, Hidden Agenda. You know, was surprised by his grandmother's reaction, and then in the end you see that, oh, she doesn't have a problem with Joe liking a boy. It's, you know, want to make sure that you know, they can face any problems and any issues, because they will have problems and issues being a same-sex couple. How many people in Thailand sat down and watched that? And how many grandparents or older parents or parents were sitting in the room when their kids were watching that, or when their young ones were watching that? And you know, even in My School President, when they talked about, oh, one day the dinosaurs will die out, and then come to find out that's the term that we use for people in that country that don't support it, and that's what they're waiting on, right? So to call it just say, oh, it's just fantasy, it's just fiction, yeah, but that will push change, right? Because it's pushing change. The fact that Thailand, what did they just have their first Pride?
It wasn't the first Pride.
It wasn't the first one, but
first Pride after COVID.
After COVID, okay. But how long have they had Pride compared to like Western countries? Is it still relatively new?
Thailand is tourist gay, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So they're going to have festivals. They have all these things, but it really is targeted more towards gay tourists.
Yeah.
It's
so,
not...
but the push to now have gay and queer being represented in their own media will hopefully changing minds of people who
is. Yeah.
But the interesting thing in Thailand is, and P. Jenny talked about it a few times, is that she said as a trans person she can only portray, you know, sort of comedic characters. She could never become the main character because she is trans. And it's exactly that you're saying. It's very much, you know, the thing with Thailand is very interesting. You know, sex industry and the queer industry is very much tourist gay, tourist sex. It's not about their own, you know, community. We know that it was a problem when the Miracle of Teddy Bear was on Channel 3, that the ratings was extremely low because people were complaining about how it shouldn't be on prime time. And most of the BL, except when 131 did To Serve With Love, but almost every BL that we've been watching is not on a primetime main TV show station, right? So they're online, they're targeted for younger people, and same in Korea. So they have all of them are just a web series. I think only the Systematic era managed to get it on TV, but that is the first time it happened. Japan is still doing all the LGBTQ show in like midnight, past midnight, even though they have the biggest rating. All the actors came out with, you know, better jobs, and they keep winning awards, like national awards. But all of that happens after midnight. So there is still a little thing of like, it's still a bit of a taboo. So like, yeah, they might be really big, but it's, you know, and the same thing with like all those BL actors, right? You know, some of them leave the BL world, like, you know, got kind of wild and stuff, because they know that staying in BL world will only keep them in the BL world. If they want to make it big in Thailand, they need to get out and start filming things like Lakhon and things like that. That's where they're gonna be big in Thailand. So yeah.
And a great example of that is Mario Maurer. He was in Love of Siam.
Yeah.
Yeah, with Pitchy. Pitchy still does work with BL. He does theme songs. He's acted in a few. But Mario is definitely way bigger than him now because Mario is doing Lacorns. Mario is like one of the top actors in Thailand now. And I think Love of Siam is still his only ever BL. That's the only one he's ever done. So I understand why a lot of them want to quote unquote escape BL, even though it's a lot deeper than that. There's way more to it than just escaping for fame. There is, we all know about the stuff. We saw War of Why.
We all saw
War of Why. There's deeper conversations to have there about why a lot of them want to leave BL, definitely. But yeah, like it's now becoming a more top grossing export.
Yeah.
Not necessarily in Thailand. It's definitely a top grossing export. And we see it with Korean BL now because some Korean government agency is funding a BL, even though Korean law still, you know, they still don't have same-sex marriage. There's still no protection at work. Like there's if you join the military and you're openly gay, you are deemed mentally incapable of serving, something like that. Like, so, but here they are funding a BL.
Well, and I think we shouldn't. Well, I guess to say hope. Again, a lot of what you're talking about, that was Western media when it came to LGBTQ stories, right? Like, you didn't watch these shows. Like, I specifically remember sitting down and watching the first primetime same-sex kiss, Dawson's Creek. That was the first time on network television.
Good point. I remember that too. Like, it was huge.
And even when I was in college.
In front of my children?
Yeah, the first time daytime television. So our soap had a BL kiss. Oh gosh, what was this? Not even on TV anymore. As the World Turns, I think is what it was called. Or yeah, Days of Our Lives. One of those. I watched that in college, and college was for me like a little over 10 years ago. So if it's changed a lot in the last 20 years here. So just for hope, I feel like even though it's kind of more of an export, just watching the BLs and the conversations that they're having in the shows and in the films, I think there will be change. And it feels slow because we want it to change now, right? We want these countries to accept their citizens and allow them to have the same rights and everything. But I definitely think it's happening. And
but again, yes, conservative, how the US was conservative, and it was the introduction of queer media that helped open up spaces, and
it's still pretty conservative.
Yeah.
And there are still people that have a lot of problems with, like, just don't go to comment section on Facebook, but if you go to comment section on Facebook, you would think that people are walking into your homes and forcing you to sit down and watch Heartstopper because they're just shoving it down your throat, is how a lot of people feel. But I think just being on the outside of it, that change, it feels like it's happening for like Thailand and Korea. Even if it's slow moving, even if it's only online or web shows or at night, just the fact that they're even doing it shows that it's changing, and hopefully it will continue to change and help move just the political landscape forward, because people are consuming it and they want to see they no longer want to see these just as TV shows, fantasy. They want to see this happen in real life.
And it's that thing where I'm seeing exactly the same parallel like I was watching Japan happening, you know. It started off with a lot of BL shows were very much with new actors who have no idea what they're doing, and to be honest, some of those stories is awful to watch. But it needs that start. And so now we've got some of the big A-list actors going into BL shows, and they're doing really well. Same with Thailand, right? We started off with a lot of these actors are very new. Even Mario, when he did it, it was very, very new. And it was their break, right? So they all knew that going into BL was their break into the entertainment world, and they did it. Now we're seeing really good actors like, you know, Film and Jam, who did the second one. Law of Attraction is just amazing, and because they are amazing actors themselves, and the story was perfect. And then you've obviously at the moment you've got I Feel Your Linger in the Air with Longcole and Bright, who are amazing actors themselves anyway. So you are gonna now see BL stories that aren't done by new actors, and there's nothing wrong with them, but you've got really good experienced actors doing BL who want to tell a really, really good story. And you're seeing that change now, and we're seeing experienced actors going, oh yeah, no, I'll do BL because it's not about a break. This is about me wanting to do the story because it's a good story. And I can see that shifting now that we've got about 2 shows with experienced actors. You know, we might see more. And obviously, I know that's not everybody's taste, because some people just want to watch, you know, schoolyard love story, and that's fine. But if you really want to move into the more mature storyline, you've got that choice now too as well. So yeah, I'm seeing that change. I'm seeing people talking more about, you know, supporting the queer community. As I said, they might not even be part of it. They might not even be allies, to be honest, but they just wanted to know more. They eventually become allies, actually. Some of them actually do become allies. They go, oh, this is not okay, because I want my characters in the book or in the series to actually get married and have all these things as well. So I want to see that in real life. Can we do that? You know, so we are seeing people talking about that a lot more than, yes, that when I first started watching BL, it was just characters that are, you know, it's really even hard to tell people why you're watching BL. I mean, it's like, what is this? Like, why are you watching that, you know? And it's like, it's no different to any rom-com. And that's what the conversation I've been having. It's no difference to, you know, the Mills and Booms that you pick up from the bookshop. It's not that different, except the characters are, you know, 2 people of the same sex.
Mm-hmm.
And we mentioned something that I want to get into. We're talking, we mentioned actors and the fact that more experienced actors are coming into BL now. Of course, in the West, we see people say gay characters should be played by gay actors, which in the West, I understand why people think that way. But I also feel like it's pushing a limit. And the limit is, going back to Heartstopper, Kit Connor was forced to come out because of people just pushing it, and they forced an 18-year-old kid to come out of the closet. And then we also look at Thai BL actors like Kuhart, who is openly gay, and what does he get? He's always receiving hate, always receiving comments about the way he dresses, about how he identifies, and people making videos calling him a pedophile, which I'm still like, if you have a problem with the fact that he was paired with a 16-17-year-old, blame the company, don't blame him. He didn't pick the actor, they picked the actor. But then we also have them looking at Max from Max and Nat, who is assumed straight, because I don't think he's ever come out about his sexuality. He was 25 and paired with a 15-year-old who he still acts with, but no one said the same thing about him. Instead, we have fan clubs saying, you got to pay us a dowry for Nat, and joking about that, and they're all cool with it. No one's complaining about that one, because again, Max is assumed straight, but everyone is complaining about, well, not everyone, but a lot of people are complaining about Kuhart and attacking Kuhart because he's openly gay. So us as viewers, when we're watching a show, especially a BL show, and especially since like people say with the old definition, it's about the fantasies of straight women. how important is it for you guys that the actor playing the character is gay or bi or open, whatever?
Well, for me, it's not. But again, from coming from a Western view and then growing up and watching a lot of LGBTQ content, the issue is opportunity, right? LGBTQ actors, out actors do not get the same opportunities as straight actors do once they come out. Once they come out, they're no longer viewed as being able to play the strong male lead or the sweet, innocent ingenue. They can only play, LGBT characters. They're not given even the opportunity if they act, any kind of way that's outside that norm. Whereas straight actors, you're just assuming a role. It's not that big of a deal. You do the role for 3 to 9 months, and then you get your awards, and then you go back to doing whatever straight content you want. So then here it's like, that's not fair. I don't care who plays the role, but you can't. Why are we not giving this presumed gay guy or lesbian woman the same opportunities as we would this presumed straight person, right? I feel like I'm of the mindset of the person who's best for the role should get the part. But when you have Billy Porter said it, he was trying to do the auditions for the straight characters, but because he's a little bit more feminine just in his everyday, he was being looked over, possibly also because he's a black man being looked over for these roles that presume straight men who act straight were getting easily. And so there's a fairness there, right? I don't know if that's the same for these Asian actors. It sounds like some of them, in order to get other roles and to get better, that they have to distance themselves from BL, which is sad, because especially if it was a successful show or successful film, this should be something that they're proud of, and they shouldn't have to distance themselves from it. I don't really see people doing that a lot in Western media, distancing themselves from the LGBTQ roles that they might have had when they were younger actors, or and of course it's kind of a joke. Oh, you want to be taken seriously, you need to do an LGBTQ film and you need to play an LGBTQ character, right? And then you'll be taken seriously as an actor. So I think the stigma of it just across the board, because there's still stigma in Western media about it, it needs to dissipate so that people can just play characters and just play roles. And I think if we just kind of start pushing it as these are just people, just like you and me, or just like anyone, the only difference is who they might be attracted to. That's the only difference. And don't get rid of the category, but and don't make this content for straight people, but just remind people that this is no different than your standard boy meets girl. It's just a boy meets boy or a girl meets girl. It's the same. And their struggles might be slightly different. There's a lot of sameness to them. So if I answered your question correctly, because now I'm just babbling.
I think, there's obviously the sadness of Connor having to come out because he's been constantly being said, oh, I think you're queer baiting, and then he basically pushed out, not at a time that he wanted to or feel comfortable with. We know that in Asia generally, there's stigma with queer actors and actually just queer people generally. So it's coming out is not easy, and most of these actors do not say that they are or not queer. for a number of really good reasons. So if we're saying we can only have queer actors for Asian BL, then we're probably not going to have many, because they might be queer but they won't come out. And if you say that as soon as they do a BL, therefore they have to be queer, then they suddenly become like, I'm coming out, And you have others who are just wanted to do BL, like you were saying earlier, because it's a character they want to do, and it's they just want to talk about a story of someone falling in love. But yeah, we have seen a lot of queer actors even in Thailand that are not treated as well. Cool Heart had a really tough time even back in the days before with they were with Santa. We've seen all those clips of them being bullied and things. We hear that PP talks about it as well when he's get all those homophobic comments, that he said he's used to it, but he's not happy when people start attacking Bilkin because Bilkin doesn't need it. And it's like, well, PP should never be used to it. I mean, that's a really sad thing to say, that he used to people attacking him because of his, he hasn't openly said that he is queer, but he has hinted. But again, like, he shouldn't have to feel comfortable. And also, we are seeing some of them kind of locked into a queer story, right? So, or character. So we know, Cool Heart is one, PP is another one, who kind of get locked into a more queer characters, and they can't. And even like when PP did his music videos, or his partners are men, but we don't see that with Bilkin, even though he has done a BL. And so we do see some of them sort of locked into, if you're queer, you can only do queer story and you can't do straight story. So I can understand why they don't want to come out. We know that even actually some of them, when there's a story about Cherry Magic in Japan. So when Akaso Eiji was asked to join that show, initially he said no, because he didn't want to do a BL. He didn't think that was his thing, and he was convinced by his company to do it, right? Because another actor who did Osan's Love, one of his colleagues, became massive after they did Osan's Love. So he was convinced to do it, and he wasn't going to do it because he doesn't want to be doing a queer character, right? So these are the things that people get, like, it can get quite uncomfortable for actors to do it. They get asked as well, are they queer? Are they, do you know what it feels like to be queer? And some of them might, but they just can't say it because they might lose other opportunities. There's a lot more in the Asian countries, like, before they can say that we can only have queer characters for queer actors for queer characters. I think there's still a bit, to go before we can actually do that. Yeah, even if they are actually queer, they can't come out. It's the problem. So, yeah.
Yeah, because when you bring that up, I'm thinking about Apple and how so many people want him to come out. They're really trying to focus on saying that they believe he's queer, he's assumed queer, and want him to come out. And I remember having an argument with someone because they were like, well, he could, even if he's in the closet, he can just say no. And I'm like, no, he might not be able to say yes or no to the question. We don't know what's going on in his private life. We don't know if he is afraid of saying no, because if he says no, someone's gonna put proof out there. We don't know what's going on. Like, leave him alone. Stop asking these questions. But I feel like in the Western world, there's become this sort of entitlement to people's sexuality that definitely needs to be addressed. And because of where we are now, where people want queer actors for queer roles, which does in itself have good intentions, we've kind of come to this place where, because of those good intentions, it's become this entitlement, and this entitlement is going to out people. And we got to be very careful of that. We don't want to put someone in a situation where they've been outed to get a role. That's just sucky in general.
Yeah, because there's more
Ladies,
consequences than just being in that role, right? I mean, they might get that role, that's great, but there are other things that, I mean, Apple talked about it a lot because he said he's been asked that since he started acting, people keep asking him, and that's why he hated the entertainment industry. He left and went to New York and then came back, and and people still asking him if he's queer, and he's like, there's more than just coming out, so that you can act in a character. It's a lot of other things, and of course, in the Asian context particularly, it's also the shame that you brought onto your family, that your family and their relatives might not want to know that you are queer, because that brings shame to the family. So it's not just you coming out, it's what it means to the rest of the community, yourself, your family.
so while Ceci is busy, so B, what I want to ask of you specifically, for you as an Asian person now living in the Western world, viewing BL, how has there been any effect on you personally in how you view BL now living in this Western world with you're from originally Hong Kong? Yeah, with because I know Hong Kong has BL. I've watched Hong Kong BL and stuff like that. I don't know how popular it is in Hong Kong, but what has been that shift for you?
My shift for me is about how we see BL as a really good escape for the queer community. So when I living here in New Zealand, and I work with a lot of queer ethnic communities, often the conversation is how that the queer culture and the ethnic communities are quite different to your mainstream Western culture, right? So they don't want to go to a rainbow event where it's very explicit and in your face or queerness or nudity or whatnot. They just want to hang out and be cute and maybe have a coffee or something like that. And watching some of this queer media kind of help them, like it's as I said, it's very much a rom-com, but that's like kind of what they wanted. They don't need that hardcore story, and not everyone needs to be an advocate. You can just enjoy and consuming. And so I think some of these media in the Western world for Asian community is really good. I am seeing a change, actually interesting change of BL and GL in the popular culture here in New Zealand. So I'm seeing more of those manga and appearing on the shelf, which they never did. It's only been like that for the last 3 years that we're starting seeing a lot more of that. That was never there. We've never seen BL manga on sale in a major shop. So we are seeing that change, that the Western communities are start seeing, oh, that's interesting, want to see more BL content. And I think also living here in New Zealand makes me feel like we are pretty privileged to be able to have marriage equity. People seem to be a bit more open generally about LGBTQ. But yeah, again, the media helps sort of bring that to the Western world about how different it is. So not too long ago, there is a company here in New Zealand called Tēnā Koe, and Casey Williams, who writes for Teens Vogue, actually started that company, and he did a series on TikTok called Nights of the Light or something. Can't remember. Anyway, which
Ships
is
in the night. Ships in the night.
That's right. And so he did that BL show, and he made it quite clear, I think in one of the interviews, that he wanted an Asian character in it because BL is Asian, which was sort of like, but the other character is Maori, so New Zealand native Maori, and it's very interesting to watch that, and it's funded by New Zealand public money, and just watching that, being able to see kind of part of me on that show, because the boy's from Hong Kong and he talked about himself, coming from Hong Kong. Then you got a Maori character. It's like the first time I've actually seen a BL in New Zealand that kind of that resonate with me. Unfortunately, I don't think a lot of audience are from New Zealand, so I'm hoping that it get more view here though. But yeah, just interesting to see. I did write to Casey though. I said, as much as I love watching the show, and you've got what's his name, the Australian guy, I keep calling him Stuart.
They had Perth. Straight Perth.
Straight Perth or Australian Stuart, because his name is actually Stuart.
Yes, Stuart.
As much as I love Stuart.
Stuart? What?
Yeah, his name is
Stuart. His mother, when he was born, looked at him and said, "Oh, look at Stuart."
Yeah.
Stuart. Oh,
he was
terrible.
called Perth because he was from Perth. So when he moved to Thailand, they gave the kids that gave him that name because he was from Perth. So he was called Perth. Anyhow, I said, as much as I love Perth or Australian Stuart, I said there is actually another person that come from New Zealand who could actually be on that show. We could have got that instead. But it's just really cute to see that happening, and I'm hoping that we're going to see more of that. And as you know, I talked a lot about the differences between Asian culture and BL, so just really getting people to have an understanding, hey, look, it's different. What you see is different because the context they're in, and there's no right or wrong, but that's just how it is. And I think if you have a bit of more open mind, and you'll be like, oh, that's cool. I mean, even like with K-pop and K-drama, that was never a thing until the last 10-20 years, right? I mean, and people start now really enjoying the language, the food, and everything that wasn't there. And I'm hoping the same with Asian BL, that people gotta go, oh, right, this is what it is, and I'm open to it, and I want to learn more. And yeah.
As you were talking, I was slowly realizing that I've actually seen the show that you were describing. Because at first I was like, I don't know what you're talking. It's like the Asian character, his mom owns like a grocery store, and they were childhood friends, right?
I think it was like they hook up in a bar or something.
Oh, okay. Maybe
it's a TikTok BL. And Perth shows up randomly in it for some reason.
Well, there's a show. I thought it was from New Zealand, but it could be Australian, where it's like an ensemble cast, but two of the characters, this one is his family is originally from China. Mom owns a grocery store and he works in it, and then his best friend. Oh no, he's not Mari. He's Muslim. Never mind.
Yeah, so the one in the TikTok is it's a Maori boy and a Hong Kong migrant to New Zealand, and they hook up at a bar. Perth showed up randomly as a friend of the Maori boy and gave him some tips and things. That it was like, it was really random. You're right.
Look, when he said, "Did you douche?" I was like, "Oh, we're going there." We're going there.
Okay, sorry.
I was like, Casey, I could have recommended you a Kiwi boy who could do that same role. I know who I talked to Peter Pan a little bit. So I'm like, we could have got a Kiwi boy who come in and speak on there, and he speaks a little, he said he doesn't have a Kiwi accent, but he still does. What makes him much sound better. I mean, we've got an Australian-New Zealand rivalry, if you don't know, so. I like Perth, but
I know. So, question to you, Ceci. So for you now, as a Black woman who you've been watching, you're a Black woman, but you've been watching or taking in queer media since middle school. Mm-hmm. You and I probably started around the same age. My first one was Queer as Folk, which I should not have been watching.
No, I didn't watch Queer as Folk until I was at 17 in high school, and that's only because I could rent it from Blockbuster without my parents.
Oh, yeah, I was watching it at 12 years old. I should not have been.
You should not have
But
been.
yeah, so for you, going from Western queer media into Asian queer media, what has that done for you? Any changes in your views or anything like that, especially when it comes to queer media in general?
I think the biggest thing, because like I was saying earlier, a lot of the LGBTQ movies and things that I watched growing up always had kind of tragic endings. It was very rare to watch a show with LGBTQ characters or a movie where something terrible did not happen to one or both of them, or that it was very melancholy in the end. And over time, that became kind of triggering for me. And probably the first time I sat down and watched a show where the character did not end up being devastated at the end of it all was Schitt's Creek, right? There's a happy ending in that show for the gay men in that show. Not so much the straight woman, but the gay men in that show. And so coming into BL, even though Camp Roach was my first one, there was still a happy ending to it, right? And then the ones that I saw after that have mostly been happy endings. And I vehemently refuse to watch anything that doesn't have a happy ending. And if you suggest it to me and it doesn't have a happy ending, I become very upset with you. So for me, it's been just nice to see that these stories can end well. I know for a lot of people, to end it the way that they've done or to do the stories they've done is very cathartic for them. They're telling their real stories, they're telling real life, and it's very cathartic for them. But it's like there has to be something brighter and happier. And I think a lot of that from all of the countries have been a lot brighter and happier. Two, it has allowed me to kind of open my mind to other cultures. I did a TikTok video about how for me, I have to kind of be very mindful in turning off that, Western mindset when watching a lot of these shows, because a lot of them still infuse a lot of their culture into the show, what they do. You see a lot of characters that go to temple, and that they still carry on a lot of their country's traditions in the show. It's shown in the show. So learning about that, the things that they say, the things that they talk about. I don't know how many times I've Googled, what does that mean? I have no idea what that means. So it's kind of, for me, allowed me to open my mind to other cultures in general, to learn that there are a lot of these countries are not as progressive as I perceive them to be, because I'm living in my bubble here in America. And for me, I'm grateful for that, because I can, start to lift up these voices and be an ally and supporter over here from my little American bubble of these countries that are trying to push that stuff. Whereas before, I never would have known, and I never would have, and really before it was just because the thought of sitting down and reading a TV show just was not something I wanted to do, and now I do it with ease. So I'm really good at it now. So I think those are two things that I've really gotten from consuming BL content, or at least LGBTQ content from another country, is that I get to learn more about that country, and I just get to kind of have that same escape that a lot of people kind of get from just kind of the reality of what it is to be LGBTQ around the world. I can kind of escape that for a little bit.
Thank you so much, ladies, for joining me. Could you each just give us a little bit of information on where to find you, follow you, and a little bit of information about your content? If you want to start us off.
Right, okay. So my name is Bee, and you can find me on pretty much every social media through Instagram, X or Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, under Love Boys Info, and I've been doing a couple of interviews with people as well on YouTube, and basically, like what you're saying, we're just trying to find out more about, the stories behind every story, talking to people, diverse range of people who create content as well. A lot of what I do has been talking about information behind the story. So I've started all my BL social media on stories behind the story. So I write about stories behind some of these BL that you've been watching. I spent a lot of time writing a lot of content for Not Me, and doing a lot of research on that. And then when I'm on my TikTok, a lot of them is about talking about cultural differences as well. And I've been watching BL for a very long time. So as I said, I'm happy for you to engage with me. Sometimes I do crazy TikTok dances and go on to PK battles with Bess last night. Things like that. But happy for you to, if you have a questions, I'm always happy to do the research for you as well. And yes, thank you so much for inviting us to this podcast, JD.
No problem, Bee, and thank you so much for joining. And Ceci, tell us a little bit about where to find you and about your content.
Okay, so my social media name, 25th and South, it's the same everywhere. I do have a YouTube channel and a Twitter and an Instagram, but I mostly post content on TikTok. And I'm on the other end of the spectrum of Bee. Mine is mostly just like random thoughts on the shows that I'm watching. So reviews, but random thoughts. And then a lot of thirst stuff and funny BL edits. I don't keep it too serious over there. Every once in a while I get serious over there, but I like to kind of be a little bit more fun on my TikTok, just because I get enjoyment out of that. And there's so many people that know more than me, and you can go over there if you want to learn. You can go to Bee if you want to learn. You come to me if you want to thirst. I keep it very surface level. And every once in a while
Very thirsty.
Very thirsty. I keep it very thirsty over there. And every once in a while I'm happy to do one of these little interviews and talks, because I get to learn stuff too. So yeah, that's me.
Thank you guys so much for joining, and thank you everyone for listening to this episode of Time for BL. Have a wonderful morning, evening, afternoon, and good night, whatever it is, wherever you are.